A judge will hear the case about questionable petition signatures in the 2nd congressional district race. Next week, Democrats will argue in court why they feel independent Sean Brown should not be allowed on the ballot.
And this comes as we uncover even more issues. 13 News Now investigator Laura Geller joins us with the new information.
Well, that hearing is set for Wednesday, August 29th in Richmond. In new court filings, the Democrats are revealing more allegations of forgery. And we've talked to a new person who reveals different concerns about the Brown petitions. Dr. Amelia Ross Hammond is clearing up questions about the address listed as Sean Brown's home. They've come up in our investigation into the petitions submitted to get her on the ballot.
I'm just explaining it all to you because I know many rumors are going around.
Brown's attorney told us 5587 Campus Drive is the Independent's address. But Ross Hammond owns that property, and she says it is not Brown's home. Ross Hammond helps women who are running as Democrats in the 2nd District. That's how she came to be involved with Brown. She explains Brown asked to use the townhome as a staging area for her campaign for a couple weeks. But that's all.
There was something around about her living there. No, she's never lived there.
Why could that matter? State code says if the petition does not have the name and address of the candidate on the front of the form, the petition shall be rendered invalid. Meanwhile, in new court filings, the Democrats now say they have 40 affidavits from voters who swear their signatures or their family members' signatures were forged. According to their records, 32 of those signatures were in fact validated by the state to get Brown on the ballot. The Dems argue Brown's certification was only achieved through the counting of fraudulent signatures.
I think that there should be more effort, not fighting against me, but fighting for the people.
Now, Brown hopes her team can go to court to argue why she should still be allowed to continue fighting for the 2nd District seat. Her attorney filed this motion in the case. It reads, Sean Brown is the person who the plaintiff is trying to ultimately remove from the ballot. Her interest should be represented. The motion also asks the court to dismiss the lawsuit. And we've told you some of the signatures under the microscope were collected by staffers of Republican incumbent Scott Taylor. No word yet if his team will get involved in this suit as well. Laura Geller, 13 News Now.